Who knows what the MCU is going to look like after Infinity War, but they're going to need some new blood.
The Shadow knows. No, wrong property.
Oh, for God's sake. I'm not even going to bother trying to do a second take on that. I'm just going to let that be ruined by them. Hey, everybody! Welcome to Council of Geeks. My name's Nathaniel Wayne, and I am joined by Ryan Daly, who has stolen my look.
I'm back, and I can wear a hat, too. Yeah. 2018, we're all about the brand. Council of Geeks.
So, we're kind of doing the opposite of what it was last time you saw us together. Last time we had a collection of ideas, concepts that have appeared in the Marvel comic books that we said should not ever be used in the movies. This time we've got some characters, some broad strokes, some stories that we think should be used. And the timing of this works out rather well. Because you told me about this.
Yeah, perfect. As of the time that we were recording this, just a few hours ago, Marvel made a slew of new announcements, including, very exciting, they have pushed up the release date, the US release date for Avengers Infinity War. So it will now be released a week earlier, April 27th in the United States. That's the same day that it's being released in the UK and the overseas markets. Basically, they want a global launch. Perhaps to avoid spoilers, they might want more time, more lead time before Solo, a Star Wars story, comes out and starts eating away at
yeah. Solo was going to stomp all over it.
But the important thing to know about that now is that's April 27th. Today, as we record this, March 1st, Avengers Infinity War comes out next month.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was only the first of several announcements, as I was mentioning to you. Because what we're going to be talking about for this topic is sort of the future of Marvel and some suggestions that we have. But let's look at the future that they have officially laid out for us.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this year, 2018, April 27th, Avengers Infinity War. July 6th, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Next year, Captain Marvel, March 8th, 2019. The as yet untitled Avengers 4. I think it's going to be called Avengers Forever, but I could be wrong. As of now, they have not released the title. I don't.
As long as the 4 is part of Forever.
Exactly. I do believe that they will release the official title the week that Infinity War comes out.
I wouldn't be shocked.
But anyway, that, for now at least, is still scheduled to come out May 3rd, 2019. The Untitled Spider-Man 2, I'm assuming Spider-Man Junior Prom, coming out July 5th, 2019. So we're now in the ballgame where Marvel is releasing 3 movies a year. And that trend is not going to stop. Because in 2020, they have a release date for May 1st. I am 95% sure this is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Okay. James Gunn has said that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is coming out in 2020. I'm almost positive he said it's the first one that May release date. They also have an unnamed project coming out July 31st, 2020. Another unnamed project coming out November 3rd, 2020. And what they have just released is they have 6 more unnamed movies coming out on the following dates. May 7th, 2021, July 30th, 2021, November 5th, 2021, and then February 18th, 2022, May 6th, 2022, July 29th, 2022. I'm assuming all 6 of those movies are going to be Black Panther sequels or spin-offs.
But as well they should be.
Yeah. And one other little note, the last one that they released, July 29, 2022, that is going to be the 32nd movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Holy crap. Okay. So now, obviously, we're not going to make guesses as to what are the specific things they actually could be doing, because I'm sure some of those will be sequels, some of those will be new properties.
They're definitely going to do Black Panther 2. At this point, I think we can bet some of those unknown dates are going to be Black Panther 2 and 3.
Possibly.
Unless the sequel tanks.
I'm saying Black Panther 3 happens. I don't know if
whether or not they.
I don't know if 3 turns around quick enough to fit in the timeline we have.
Right. So Black Panther 2, probably Black Panther 3, maybe in that time. Probably Doctor Strange 2, although I haven't heard any talk about it recently.
There hasn't been word
it made enough money to warrant a sequel, but they just haven't talked about it, and it might just have to do with how. I don't think they've had problems working with Benedict Cumberbatch, but I think his schedule, he's just been more difficult to manage in terms of getting him on these properties.
I do, before we start getting into our specific ideas, I do have to wonder if with the success of Thor Ragnarok, if they're going to be looking at some of these characters who had, you know, decent but not amazing debuts, like, say, Doctor Strange, maybe looking at them
just planting them in other movies
to buoy and be supporting characters rather than try and force them continue a franchise that ends up being on the lower end of the earners.
And I would be fine with them using Doctor Strange for that purpose. It actually feeds into something that I was going to bring up later. So
let's get into this.
Are we talking about the X-Men and the Fantastic Four in terms of these?
I'm not.
I'm not either, because first of all, the deal with Fox is not set in stone yet.
It's not. I mean, it's unlikely to fall apart, but there's a ton of logistics to go through, and even after that, to actually transition everything over, it's not going to be like, oh, deal's done. X-Men movie comes out next year. Like, it's possible, maybe some of the 2021 stuff, it could be, but like you said, the deal's not final. They're not locking in dates for X-Men right now.
No. I do believe they are working on stories, though. It wouldn't surprise me if they have for years. They've got somewhere just as a pipe dream. Yeah. Some lowly staff writer come up with a story for what this movie might be.
So here's the first one that Marvel would be stupid to not be planning this right now. Because we're getting Captain Marvel, we dang well better be getting Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. I just think that's an absolute no-brainer. The only thing that becomes a question mark is, and this largely depends on how they lay out Captain Marvel's backstory in her own movie, as to whether or not she ever held the identity of Ms. Marvel. But that's not even a requirement, because you can still have Kamala Khan idolize her as Captain Marvel and go, well, I can't take her name, I'll be Ms. Marvel. And, you know, it doesn't even have to be that she's adopting Carol Danvers' former name. But Kamala Khan, in case folks don't know, she's an Inhuman. She has powers that are basically kind of it's a variation on stretching.
Yeah, I think the term that she uses most frequently is embiggening. That's a non-word word.
Yes, she has the embiggen punch. Her fist basically gets this big and she decks people. But she is a young Muslim teenager, Muslim American. And she, you know, has, in some ways, it picks up on some of the Spider-Man stuff as well. She has to balance, you know, family and school and doing all this. But it is a different approach. She is approaching this because she has a joy in what she's doing. You know, Peter Parker he can have that, but he's largely driven by guilt. Great power, great responsibility. He feels responsible. Kamala Khan just kind of wants to do good in a bit more in the abstract. But she is hugely popular. She's one of the best new characters they've introduced, I'd say, in the last decade.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think if they aren't moving on this right now, then somebody needs to lose their job.
I like this character a lot. I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be better for her. For some reason, I can't get this out of my head that I just think her destiny is in television or a streaming format and not the big screen. I hope I'm wrong, because I would like to see that in a movie, but just the relatively small-scale, street-level nature of her stories so far that I've read, which is the first 2 years, I think, of her comics that I've read so far, like, it certainly doesn't fit into the world of the Defenders and the Netflix heroes like Daredevil and Luke Cage. It's just such a different tone and idea, but feels like more that level to me.
Well, see, you say that, but Spider-Man Homecoming didn't go much beyond that.
That is true. That is true. But now, do you want it to be too much like that, or do you want to...
Well, I mean, like, that to me is the one sort of potential issue, is finding a way to distinct, because they have made Spider-Man so young.
Right.
It's not a problem in the comics. She doesn't feel like she's stepping on Peter Parker's toes, because in the comics...
But now in the movie they would be age-appropriate contemporaries and have kind of the same tone.
So that would be the one potential issue, is not having it feel like we're doing the same thing we're doing with Spider-Man, but with this character. So they would have to find some other ways to distinguish that. I think it's doable, though. That's just a pitfall to be aware of.
Okay.
What you got?
Well, this is sort of not necessarily character specific. We'll get into some of the characters that... Actually, no, you know what? Let me go back. Okay. I will start off focusing on a character that I would like to see. Spider-Woman.
Oh,
there have been a
okay.
number of Spider women to hold that moniker. I'm thinking about the original one, Jessica Drew. The one issue before I even let me lay out sort of her story first. So her very complicated backstory, to simplify the most, is that she was experimented on by her father, who was a scientist, and she was bitten or poisoned by a dangerous spider, almost died. The Hydra was involved in sort of genetically manipulating her to give her powers. She ends up becoming an agent of Hydra, then flips and kind of becomes more of a hero. The one thing that I kind of see as her story is she can sort of play into some of the Black Widow things. Now, if they make a Black Widow movie, we'll see. But I like her as a character who has this backstory of being a Hydra agent who was flipped and now could be hunted by both sides.
Okay.
And the kind of like the story I see is more of like an espionage, Born Identity type of thing, where she's being hunted by S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra because of the things she knows. Meanwhile, she's discovering the new powers that she's been given with because of the way she was experimented. You can give it an international flavor because I believe her father was British and she spent most of her time in the UK, so I always hear a British accent in my head when I read her.
Okay.
So I think casting somebody like that, like Emily Blunt or somebody else, somebody younger.
Ava Green.
Eva Green. Eva Green, like I told you before, Eva Green was my default for any sort of villainous woman, but yeah, she'd be great as Spider-Woman too. Some of the more recent comics, they've actually given her a daughter, or like they actually made her pregnant and
Continuing to fight
crime as a
while visibly pregnant.
Yeah, I don't know if I would lead with that, but it would be different.
See, here's the thing. Part of me says you do that as your follow-up, but another part of me thinks maybe you should lead with that, and here's why. I like what you've sold, but if they're making a Black Widow movie, then the espionage, going between two sides niche is likely already filled, and then we run into the same problem that Kamala Khan potentially has with Spider-Man. Whereas if you come at this, it could still be espionage, but if you lead with the wrinkle, oh, and she's pregnant, that's an immediate way to distinguish.
That's one of the problems with Marvel's women. As much as I love their female characters, a lot of them are spies or secret agents or ninjas.
They are.
They all kind of have like the same shtick.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Even the superpowered ones kind of fall into that. When Mystique got her own book, they made that an espionage kind of story.
Elektra and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. It's a solid pick though. I like it. So I'm gonna do one now. Now normally when I talk Marvel, I talk almost exclusively the movies, and the reason for that is I don't keep up with all the other stuff anymore. At this point, there's Netflix stuff that I couldn't finish. I've fallen off Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., though I've been told it got good again after season 3, which is where I quit.
I think they're prepping for season 5 to be the last one.
What I've heard is that they are having the season finale, the series finale for season 5 to be a place where they can leave it, but they could pick it up again if they get renewed. Right. So maybe it's ending. But if it does, I would want this in its place.
Okay.
And that is She-Hulk. Here's the thing. So She-Hulk, backstory super simple. She is Bruce Banner's cousin. She got a blood transfusion from him because he was a compatible donor. They did not realize that his condition of being the Hulk basically transferred over in a form over to Jennifer Walters. So the specifics have varied. For a while, she was set off by rage. That got dropped after a while. And primarily at this point, for most of her run, she's either been stuck in green and can't change, or she could switch back and forth at will, and she retains her full intelligence and everything when she is She-Hulk. Now, the reason I want this on TV, I really want to see the single green female. I want
Dan Slott version. Yeah,
I want the Dan Slott. I want Ally McBeal, but she's 6'8" in green, because Jennifer Walters is a practicing lawyer, and that's been the case for a long time. But it wasn't until Dan Slott that they really ran with this, and they had her working for a law firm that specializes in superhero-related legal matters. So it's things like helping a guy who got superpowers in an accident but didn't want them try to sue the company that he worked for.
Spider-Man suing the Daily Bugle for libel or defamation of character.
Yes.
J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, that was one. And so it's stuff like that, and I think that absolutely, I think that is a much more unique thing than anything else you could probably do with her, in terms of the things that she's known for and has done over time. And it does lend itself to television because you have your episodic format.
Following that story in that type of direction, yes.
Yes, you have a new case every episode, and I just think that's a really easy fit, and also in terms of the tone of what, and I would put this one on ABC. In terms of the tone of what those shows tend to be, I think that'd be a good tonal fit as well.
I agree. I love She-Hulk, not as much as you, but pretty close. And I love that run that you were talking about. I really like this idea, and I knew you were going to focus on this character. So instead of coming up with a different idea, I just came up with a couple of questions.
Yes.
Does the origin story work? Today, knowing what we know, like Bruce Banner, would he ever allow, would S.H.I.E.L.D., would any agency ever allow a blood transfusion from him to go to any other person, let alone like a relative or anything like that?
You would have to finagle it. Here is my thinking, and it would involve contrivance, to be frank about it. But because I don't think the fact that Bruce Banner is the Hulk is public knowledge as yet in the MCU. I believe that is still under wraps. Now, I mean, the military obviously knows who the hell he is. I don't believe the public at large has been informed that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe so.
Okay.
So what I would say is, if we're in a situation where Jennifer Walters has her accident, she needs a blood transfusion, and if we're in a situation where, just to toss something, again, this is off the top of my head, so this is contrived, but say, for the time being, because he isn't sure he can control himself, Bruce Banner is in a medically induced coma in the hospital where she gets checked in. Now, the records that these people at the hospital
don't have anything to do with it.
Wouldn't have anything to do. It'd just be like, monitor him, keep an eye on him. Here's the number that you call if he wakes up. But they're like, oh, he's compatible, and there you go. And it becomes an emergency snap judgment that gets made to try and save her life that has unforeseen consequences. Is there a better way to do it? Yeah, probably. But in terms of the doing it completely straight with him voluntarily giving his blood, no, it doesn't work.
I wonder if, looking back at the Incredible Hulk movie that so often gets forgotten, maybe something to do with Samuel Stearns, who we last saw looking like he was becoming the leader or something like that. We never saw that play out. If he still had samples of Bruce's blood and DNA or something, and then somehow his sample or whatever, whether he tried to create another one with her or it was an accident, something like that.
That would work too.
I would try and cut Bruce out of the process voluntarily altogether.
That's not a bad idea. I don't know if they're willing to dip back into.
They brought General Ross back.
They did bring General Ross back, but they also let I forget I'm losing the actor's name all of a sudden, but they let him jump ship because he was in Fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So they obviously
Tim Blake Nelson.
Thank you. They obviously didn't bother retaining him. I mean, they could sign him again fresh, but it's very clear that the MCU has not had any plans to use him in the wake of that film.
Right. Well, so then the one other question is, what would she look like as She-Hulk? Would it be practical or CGI?
My ideal would be practical. Well, on a TV budget, it would have to be.
Sure.
So what you do is...
and again, if you're not familiar with the character and you can look at the comic cover, she does not look like this enormous rage monster. She usually looks like a 7-foot-tall, beautiful green Amazon.
Yeah.
So if you can cast somebody like that...
Well, you can't cast it exactly, but I say you get somebody... I mean, I'm not necessarily saying cast her because I'm not sure she'd be a fit for the part, but if you get somebody of the physical stature of Gwendolyn Christie...
I was thinking about her too.
And then you just use forced perspective to make up another 6-7 inches on top of that, you're golden.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any need to go CGI with her because even though she's large, her proportions are muscular, but not impossible for a human being to maintain.
Those were the questions because I knew you were going to bring her to the table.
Yeah, you know me too well.
Yeah, so.
All right, what else you got?
Okay, so thinking about, again, 2020, we believe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. as I understand it, and this could always change, I believe that is going to be the end of the contract for some of those characters and actors.
James Gunn has definitely said it's the last one he's doing, and he's planning on bringing that story to a close.
Right, so I think we'll see probably the end of, you know, Star-Lord, Rocket, Gamora, Drax. By the way, I'm not expecting all of these characters to survive the 2 Avengers movies we've got coming up. It wouldn't surprise me if at least one character from the Guardians of the Galaxy world is dead before we see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Well, they're going to have to deal with Gamora and Nebula, if nothing else.
Right. I also think Drax might be on a chopping block, but I don't know. Anyway, so after that, now, James Gunn has said that that's the last one that he's writing and directing for this, but Kevin Feige sort of gave him the keys to the cosmic realm and just said, help us figure out where we go with this corner of the MCU after Guardians is over.
So are you saying what does he set up in Guardians 3 for them to keep it going?
Perhaps, yeah, and just where else can they go? He's all but confirmed that Adam Warlock will be introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, presumably as a threat at first.
Yeah.
And then probably having his redemption, coming back and being a good guy. If that works, if the character is good, if they like the actor, the performance and everything, he may be somebody who can carry the load of his own solo movie.
That's the easy go-to.
Right. And probably adapt some of the stories that Jim Starlin did with him, where he's fighting this group called the Universal Church of Truth, which is led by a character named the Magus. And then it is revealed that the Magus is in fact a future advanced version of Adam Warlock himself.
Yeah.
So
he's Adam Warlock, but more purple.
But more purple and gray with sort of whitish hair. Yeah. That was actually the storyline that introduced Gamora too. So that's just one of the directions that they could take with the Cosmic Realm, is, you know, an Adam Warlock story, give him his own movie, taking on the Magus and the Universal Church of Truth, figuring out this threat from his own future and the paradoxical natures of that. In those comics, he had a sidekick named Pip the Troll.
Oh God, I forgot about him.
Basically, basically the Lannister.
Tyrion.
Yeah, Tyrion. God, I couldn't think of. Yeah, basically Tyrion the Lannister, just with chopping on a cigar. So a story like that could be cool. Other cosmic characters that they could introduce, Quasar. I don't know enough about that character's solo adventures. We would have to ask our podcasting friend Gene Hendricks.
Yeah,
because he's more the expert. Nova.
You've got a variety of options if you go Nova.
Yeah, and once you integrate the Fox properties, you can look at stuff like Silver Surfer and other things sort of in the Fantastic Four realm.
I would actually, I mean, you can have a lot of the X-Men properties occupy that as well.
Sure.
Because
the Shi'ar Empire.
The Shi'ar.
The Starjammers basically could take place of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Honestly,
you got like space pirates. They're basically the same.
They could totally fill that niche. You could use Mojo.
But sort of the other big sort of cosmic level threat that I think they could do, and I think they want to, and I think James Gunn has said he wants to do it, but I don't know if they have the rights to it, would be the Annihilation Wave from the Annihilation comics, which is basically Annihilus from the negative zone.
Okay.
Opens up a breach and basically just floods the galaxy with these like bug insectoid aliens that just overrun and decimate whole populations. The Skrulls, the Nova Corps, everybody just like laid waste. And it was like a huge event in the comics that just spanned all these different like mini-series that led to one big thing. Really cool story, and I think it would be a good cosmic level threat that could bring together Adam Warlock, any of these other characters, any survivors from Guardians, if they do have a few remaining. Things like that would be a cool sort of event movie. I don't know if they need to build it up, but it would be another good cosmic level threat movie.
Yeah, that would work. So this is actually a character that I have to admit to not knowing very much about.
Okay.
But what little I know, I want to see him. And that's Moon Knight.
Oh, okay.
So imagine Batman, but crazy.
Wait. Imagine.
Oh no, hold on. Not in like the obsessive way that we're used to seeing Batman be. No, like multiple personality, schizophrenic, crazy, and that's basically Moon Knight. And I mean, you have to be a little nuts to be a street level vigilante who operates at night and wears all white.
Mm-hmm. He's daring them to take a shot at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't actually know much about this guy, but I know that's the pitch, that's the log line. I'm like, yes, please.
He has been interpreted so many different ways in the comics, from a very grim and gritty Batman type to a more grim and gritty Batman type.
To a Frank Miller Batman.
Right. To a very sort of cynical, just brutal, grim and gritty Batman type. It's very interesting. I mean, are you thinking about for a movie or for? I mean, I think putting him on any form of television, you run the risk of being another Daredevil.
Yeah,
because it's that kind of street level.
I'm sure there are people who would say put him on Netflix. The thing is, I know Netflix has kind of carved out its niche as the street level stuff. And that's fine, but I don't think that...
It's also got diminishing returns from Netflix, so the shine is kind of off that apple.
Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. Just because somebody is ground level does not mean they have to be on Netflix. That's not a requirement.
Right.
So I think a lot of people's brains default to that. I think he would be perfectly suited to a film. And I don't think there's any need... And again, especially because if you are talking, just ground level... in the shadows, in the alleyways, vigilantes, it's like, yeah, it's Daredevil. You've got that in the TV format. Marvel does not currently have that in a film format.
The thing with this character that I think the thing that sets him apart, that makes him the most interesting, is the schizophrenia and the multiple personality disorder. I also think that's the thing, especially in today's climate, that they need to tread very, very carefully with.
I would agree. And actually, and just to cover our own butts, I need to check which it is. Because multiple personalities and schizophrenia are not the same thing. Okay, I recognize that. I need to check which condition he actually theoretically has. But go on.
I think it's multiple personalities. Yeah, he doesn't hear voices. Well, so that's the thing. In some comics, he does hear the voice of his Egyptian god Khonshu talking to him. So
perhaps
he could have both.
So we've got
yeah, it would be multiple personalities because he has 3 different identities, at least 3 different identities.
Oh yeah, okay. So traditionally depicted with DID, dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
So yes, they would have to tread lightly on that, but also honestly, it's not necessarily a matter of treading lightly in terms of like, we need to be really careful and barely touch on this. It just has to be a matter of treating it respectfully, because honestly, we're living in an age where mental health is a conversation that is happening more. So, I mean, if nothing else, how often do we hear, as part of ongoing conversations about any number of things, how often do we hear, we need to improve mental health? It's not an awful starting place to be that the system has failed him in terms of helping him manage this.
And in terms of looking at these movies as ways of representing a more diverse population now, with movies starring Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther, a movie headlining a character with a mental disorder might be something that could be powerful and it could be profound for a specific kind of audience.
As long as it's not done in an exploitive manner, which is easy to slip into, but if whoever is working on it knows going in, it's not just a gimmick. Let's treat this seriously. Yeah, it could really work.
You've got the violence and the beating up criminals for the exploitation.
Yeah.
We've still got that. We're covering our bases. So. He would be that would be an interesting one to go to. Would be Moon Knight, especially if they kind of tackled it that way. I'd be interested. Sticking with another single character, and again, I don't really have an idea for this one. It was actually I don't. This is one that I wanted to approach because I really like this character, and I just don't know what the place for him is now. And it's Namor, the Submariner.
Okay.
DC's version of Aquaman looks a lot like Namor to a certain degree, and they're gonna beat Marvel to the punch in terms of having their Aquaman movie out. And based on the sneak screenings, the test screenings that they've done, Aquaman looks good. Comparable to Wonder Woman in terms of being an enjoyable experience. So it's not like that movie could come out, bomb horribly, and Marvel would say, see, this is how you do it with Namor. So I think if Aquaman is a success story, do they have a need or a reason to do a Submariner? And I don't know if they do, but I like the character.
As a solo franchise, if Aquaman succeeds, Namor as a solo franchise, at least leading with that, is dead in the water. I think instead what you do is you go to his roots within the primary Marvel universe and you make him a villain first.
And I would be fine with that as a foil for the Fantastic Four. The only other thing is if they did a flashback Captain America movie with the Invaders and had him in World War II, but I don't even know if that's worth it. I would be fine with him as a foil for the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I mean the Fantastic Four, or you could even have him be a foil for other folks. Yeah. But I mean that could be the way that they answer, Aquaman, because if Aquaman is the man who is bridging the peace between Atlantis and the surface world, Namor is the guy
who's a threat
who looks at the surface world and goes, you know how much better everything would be if that was just gone. So but it doesn't work if you launch him as a solo franchise, because then he's an also-ran.
Yeah.
So if you introduce him as a villain, and then depending on how that takes, maybe he gets his own film after that. But I think that's where you start.
Right. Yeah. I think that's probably the best way to go.
So I've got a couple more. I think we've got 2 left. This one is one that I continue to be surprised that we haven't heard them working on in some capacity. And this one could be TV, this could be film. Blade. They got the rights back to Blade a couple years ago. Not a peep. Zip, zero, and zilch. I don't know if his contracts tied up with the previous franchise means that they still have to deal with Wesley Snipes in some capacity. I don't mean like having to star him. I don't know if they have to buy him out of some part of the remaining contracts or something like that. And I can imagine them just not wanting to deal with him. I don't know if that's a factor.
After this much time. I mean, they did a TV show with that.
I would think stuff would have expired by now if that was the case. Right now, Marvel, we have basically a representation of the primary Marvel universe. Once the Fox acquisition goes through, we will have a representation of the X-Men side of the universe. Because, honestly, that is kind of separate from everything else. We've got representation for the cosmic side of the universe. You know what we don't have?
The horror side of the universe.
The horror, the supernatural. Closest we've got is Doctor Strange, who really only dips his toe into it. Blade is a known property. He is known to be successful. He is the lead-in to this entire side of Marvel's back catalog.
So I was actually going to talk about this too, and this was going to be one of my other things. And you mentioned the different sort of corners of the, you've got the X-Men verse, you've got the mainstream superhero New Yorker Avengers verse, you have the cosmic universe, you've even got the smaller pocket Defenders universe in this corner. What about the Marvel horror universe? I would love for them to explore this, more than just Blade, but Blade would be a central part of this. And I think to give it its own little brand, its own little stamp, and to really isolate it as a corner where it doesn't feel like you can connect to the Avengers, but you're not necessarily intruding on them. I would take characters like Blade, like Morbius, Ghost Rider, your favorite. Before that. Okay. Disney's upcoming streaming service.
Yes.
I would put them on that. And because the format could change. It doesn't have to be like a 13-episode season of show. These could be direct-to-streaming movies, or they could just be shorter seasons that are like 3 or 4 episodes or something like that, like the Netflix Castlevania thing, which was just like 4 episodes or something, but they were still really short.
It was a movie they broke into 4 parts.
Right, but you could do like limited things like that with some of these characters, but just do it. But that also do like half the budget of like one of these Avengers movies or whatever. You don't need to be that big, but you kind of create this own little world in itself of this horror world where you can find them on the streaming service. You can do a Blade one, maybe with Morbius, or maybe Morbius gets his own one, a Man-Thing one, a Scarecrow one, and all these things. And through those, you can build up to a Midnight Suns, Spirits of Vengeance type of crossover event movie thing like that. But you take a little bit of time with it.
2 things.
Yep.
The first is, I would say, since they've currently got the modern version of Ghost Rider over on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I would say maybe not necessarily introduce Ghost Rider, but
I forgot that he was even on that, yeah.
Introduce Johnny Blaze, who maybe is currently beaten the curse, but he's still tied into all of that. So I say you use him. In regards to the idea of putting it on streaming, there's one big problem with that, at least in terms of how I would like to see these characters depicted. Disney has said there's not going to be any R-rated content on that streaming service, which caps it at a PG-13, which means PG-13 vampires, PG-13 werewolves, PG-13 blood vengeance. And I'm not saying it's impossible to do that and do it well. I know it can be done well, but if Marvel is going to explore this corner of things, I want this to be where, aside from the Netflix, or if they wanted to put them on Netflix, fine. That would work too. But if they wanted to go movies rather than TV series, I would like them to go harsher. And we know that that is not completely out of the realm of possibility, especially with these characters. I mean, Blade, all three of the Blade movies were already R-rated. That's the expectation of this character. So with all of that in place, because they said, because they were specifically asked about Deadpool when the Fox acquisition started going through. Now, Deadpool specifically, because of how long this takes, it's possible that Deadpool will have wrapped up his usefulness by the time they actually get their hands on him. But they have said, if we get him, we're not going to make him PG-13. We'll allow him to still be R, which at least plants the seed that they may be open to new Marvel properties that are. I don't ever expect we'll see any of the ones they've already established being upgraded to R.
Nor should they.
No, no, absolutely not. But I could see that. I could see again Blade being the good hooking because he's the known quantity, being the way that they can go there and start to deliver that kind of stuff. But it can't be on that streaming service. If they're going
I didn't know about the rating restriction on the streaming service. And honestly, if there was another, I really just went to that because I just thought of giving it another sort of medium, another delivery device would kind of set it apart and give it its own little
identity. And that's not a bad idea.
And also just it would make it easier to just sort of fight the idea that these movies have to have a $200 million budget. And I don't like. I mean, for the horror ones, I mean, you can make them scary. You can make them cheap. Blumhouse knows how to make a cheap horror movie.
Holy God! So, yeah.
You know,
I mean, how awesome would it be if he worked on Blade? Oh man.
I remember. Gosh, I can't remember who said it. I just remember when the first Blade movie came out. I just remember hearing one of the reviews was, Wesley Snipes fights vampires even more effeminate than Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
I love those first two Blade movies. I really do.
I like the first one. I don't remember the second one very well. I think something about it I didn't like, and I didn't see the third one. But I really liked
the third one's not very good.
Yeah, so I've heard. But
well, that was David Goyer writing and directing. David Goyer only works if his script is put in the hands of a much better storyteller than him. Okay, so that's Blade. And you got anything else?
Well, I felt like I kind of took that one from you, but yeah.
That's okay.
So, two really quick, and one is sort of a bigger conceptual thing. So I think looking at what niche Guardians of the Galaxy sort of fits or fills out for the universe, but it's not part of the cosmic realm. You've got an ensemble group. You've got a built-in team that didn't have to be put together from other established characters. You've got your core group of characters, and it's lighthearted, and it's fun, and it has its own little realm. There's another, I think we can tackle another group similar to that, and it might have been tied up to this point with Fox. I bet it actually was. But assuming the rights revert back to Marvel and Disney, Alpha Flight. Oh, now this is a property I don't know that much more about other than their guest appearance. Yeah. I know they're the Canadian government super team. And I know that their guest appearances in the X-Men books. I've never actually read, I don't think, a single issue of the Alpha Flight solo comic. It is beloved by some of our friends. But looking at that group, that idea of just a Canadian super team, and you got interesting characters. But now this could also be a place, because we have said that once we get the X-Men, we don't want Wolverine right away.
No.
We don't want him sucking up all the oxygen with the X-Men the first go-around. Give him some time. Wolverine could be introduced in an Alpha Flight. Not necessarily as a major team member, but as a cameo, because he was part of that group before the X-Men.
He was.
He could be, one of their missions could be retrieving him, like they're going out into the Canadian wilderness to find this missing guy. They bump into the Wendigo, they have a fight with that.
It could be that, or even if you don't have him appear, since it's all set in Canada,
Easter eggs, yeah.
You can seed the Weapon X project.
Yeah,
you can seed Department K.
Yeah.
You can seed all the things that were involved in the creation of Wolverine as we know him, even if you don't introduce him flat out in that film.
Right. So with the Alpha Flight characters, you got the main character James Hudson, who's had several code names. I can't think of the names right now, and his wife Heather. You've got Puck, this little short of stature guy, a Sasquatch, shaman, a snowbird. Now you also have North Star and Aurora, and with North Star you get potentially the first LGBTQ character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As of right now, at least in the films, I don't know where they stand on the TV shows, but in the films, I don't think they have an acknowledged LGBTQ character or hero in any of these movies. North Star could potentially be their first, so that's something else.
Well, there's that, and they correct me if I'm wrong, and you may not know either. Don't they have decent First Nation membership?
Yeah, they do. No, in terms of in terms of having more representation across the board too, in terms of both like the Canadians and First Nations, and just like the spiritual aspects of that too, with shaman and with snowbird. You could do, I think there's just a lot, and that could be a fun little group that end every sentence with A. Sorry, that was a cheap shot.
Somebody had to do it. Okay, no, I like that. So I've got one more.
Okay.
And I've been saving this one.
Okay.
Been building up to this one.
Okay.
This is the big one.
Batman.
No, I think this is a completely untapped angle, and what I'm going to propose to do with this character.
Hang on, I'm going to write it down. I bet I can guess.
Oh, really? We'll see. I think that Marvel needs to figure out what they're going to be doing with Bob, Agent of Hydra.
Okay. I thought you were going Squirrel Girl.
No, well, Squirrel Girl's theoretically in the New Warriors thing, if that gets recovered.
Oh, okay. Bob, Agent of
Hydra. And I'll even go specific on this. So, This is looking a little bit down the ways. This is assuming the Fox acquisition goes through. Because Disney is not getting the Fox network, because they can't, because they already own ABC. They can't own more than one publicly accessible, through Signal network. However, they are getting FX.
Okay.
And there is an animated show that started on FX that is going to be wrapping up in the next couple of years. And that's Archer. And that will leave a very lovely niche to be filled, I say, by Bob, Agent of Hydra. And if you've never heard of this character, the name kind of says it all. He is this hapless minion who just keeps bumping into and up against and is in all these situations, but is never important, never does anything right, somehow manages to not get killed.
Oh, I can just see like the teaser or whatever. He's just like, he just happens to stumble into the elevator in the Triskelion during Captain America Winter Soldier, and he's not part of the group that's there to capture Captain America. He's just there like on his phone, or all of a sudden just elbow to the nose, just shatters. And he's gotcha.
And that, in a nutshell, is Bob.
Yeah. That would be good. That would be good. The only other things that I kind of wanted to mention was, I hope that Avengers 4 is not the end of the Avengers franchise, and I can't imagine it would be.
I can't imagine it would
be. So I hope it continues with characters like Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Ant-Man, and or the Wasp, if they survive the Vision and Scarlet Witch, Falcon, if any of these characters survive. And I did mention it last time, I hope Captain America continues as a legacy of some sort, whether it's Chris Evans continuing to play the character. I doubt that. Maybe Bucky picks up the shield. I just want that to continue. Looking at the type of threats they could face, I think a lot of people are looking at Kang the Conqueror, which would lead to time travel and future stories, which you don't cringe at. I also think that might be an issue in Avengers 4, so I don't know if they want to do that. But it was something that I was thinking, and I don't remember if you mentioned this. Oh, yeah. So not having Doctor Strange or Spider-Man an official member of the Avengers, but something that they could actually kind of sort of team up with. And I do think it's important that Spider-Man not be an official Avengers member.
No.
Because the character is better off when he's not, and also because Marvel Studios does not own the rights to that character, so I don't want them to handcuff their plans to Spider-Man and have Sony change the deal. Or if Sony decides to sell off their entertainment division the way Fox is, maybe Marvel doesn't get the winning bid. Maybe somebody else snipes them and says, you know what, we don't like that deal. We're keeping Spider-Man for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, back to Doctor Strange. Not having him be an Avengers member, but maybe he gets scooped up into another Avengers thing, and maybe the threat is something like Mephisto. And you have an Avengers supernatural...
One more day!
Yeah. But you could have an Avengers supernatural story where instead of fighting robots or aliens, they're fighting demons or something like that. They go to hell. Something like that could be interesting and different. So
yeah, no, that...
Or Dormammu.
I was going to say...
If we don't get a Doctor Strange 2, Dormammu could be the next big bad.
If you're going to if they decide not to give Doctor Strange an ongoing solo franchise, Dormammu is certainly a threat that warrants the Avengers.
Sure. Yeah. So
that's it. Those are the ideas that we have, the characters, the concepts that we think Marvel should. So, Kevin, Mr. Feige, I know you watch. So, give me a call. We'll fill you in on some more details, but.
Also, Tigra, Black Knight, Hercules, Wonder Man, Captain Britain,
White Tiger,
thank you.
So those are our ideas. What do you folks think? What do you think about the ones we suggested? What are some characters that so far have not been announced or appeared in any Marvel-related entertainment outside the comics that you think should be integrated? Where do you think they would fit? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. This guy's got a whole bunch of podcasts. I'm gonna have another drink. A whole bunch of podcasts that he does. I'll link to one of them down in the description. And I've got all the stuff to do, like support me on Patreon or buy a t-shirt or follow me on Twitter or listen to my podcast, etc., etc. Links for everything, including his junk, will be down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.
Seriously, 8 untitled Marvel Cinematic Universe properties coming out in the next couple of years. 5 of them are going to be Shuri movies.
I would go see every one.